AOC once again shows what a hypocrite Democrats are while she's trying to virtue signal. It's unbelievable. She's the queen of virtue signal fails. Oh yeah, if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe, click that bell to get notifications, and hit the like button. Please, that helps us out. Thanks. So AOC virtue signaled over illegal migrants being shipped off to other destinations around the country. And there are a lot of sanctuary cities in this country that Democrats created when Trump became president so that they could virtue signal that they were better people than the peasants, the MAGA Republicans that Trump represented. Actually, Trump represented everyone because everyone benefited from his policies, but don't tell a liberal that. But anyway, so we have AOC acting as a hypocrite. And she complained about it. Really, if you think about it, the Democrats didn't really say that much when Lori Lightfoot, when Governor Abbott from Texas was sending illegals to Lori Lightfoot's Chicago so that they could probably get shot on any given weekend. But I digress. But yeah, so she was complaining, saying that it was un-American, all that crap. And then she shipped them off somewhere, and that wasn't un-American. At first, she virtue signaled and said, "Oh no, we take care of them." No, you didn't. You shipped them off. And the same thing, the same complaints were coming from Muriel Bowser in D.C. when illegal migrants were shipped there, and the same thing with Eric Adams in New York when he said, "This is horrific." Yeah, it's horrific. What do you think the border towns in Texas and Arizona are going through? I mean, you guys got 50 to 100, maybe 200 illegals sent to your city, and you're told to take care of them, watch over them, and yet you're a sanctuary city, but Texas is not a sanctuary state. Neither is Arizona. All right, so AOC reminds everyone what a hypocrite Democrats are when their phony virtue signaling on illegal migrants is exposed. On Friday, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez doubled down on her condemnation of busing illegal migrants from the southern border to blue sanctuary cities across the country. AOC took to social media to say that Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' decisions to move illegal migrants to sanctuary cities were appalling. And she likened it to trafficking. Trafficking. Do you believe this? Trafficking. So she doesn't say anything about the trafficking that goes on with the drug cartels smuggling people and drugs into our country. With the fentanyl epidemic coming straight through our southern border because Joe Biden has pretty much opened it up, regardless of what they say. So she calls it trafficking, what they did. Of course, she did this because she's a moron who got her seat by winning an audition held by Justice Democrats in New York City. I mean, you could put a D on a glass of water, like Nancy Pelosi said, in her district and get elected. So without actually saying their names, AOC charged that both Republican governors were guilty of crimes against humanity. Okay, well then what are the mayors, the Democrat mayors in blue sanctuary cities? What are they? Are they committing crimes against humanity when they ship them off? Are they? See, the Republican governors are trying to send a message that, hey, we asked for help by this humanitarian crisis that you created, Biden administration, and you haven't done jack. I mean, they haven't done enough. Now there's reports saying that there's about 8,000 per day coming over the border. Can you imagine? It's been 4.9 million illegal aliens, according to FAIR, that came over in the last 18 months. 5 million people he brought into this country. Never to be heard from again. They vanished like a puff of smoke. Okay, so she goes on to social media and says, it's appalling that far-right politicians seem to have decided that fall before the election is their regularly scheduled time to commit crimes against humanity on refugees. They're not refugees. There's no war going on where they are. They're not being persecuted. They're not refugees. They're illegal migrants who came up from Venezuela, if she's talking about DeSantis. Don't normalize this. Lying to and trafficking people for TV and clicks isn't politics as usual. It's abuse. They didn't lie to anybody. According to Ron DeSantis, they signed consent forms. They asked to be flown to Martha's Vineyard. Okay, so the congresswoman from the Bronx said nothing about the Biden administration flying millions of illegal migrants to destinations around the country for 18 months in the middle of the night, like a Pablo Escobar drug drop-off. I mean, that's what he's doing. He's doing it in the middle of the night. He's not giving prior notice to the destinations. Okay, a lot of red districts out there that he's sending them to. And And she doesn't have a word to say about that. Like most hypocritical leftists, she only got upset when DeSantis sent 50 of them to the rich liberal Democrat Haven Island of Martha's Vineyard that's 86% white. As Tucker said, you would think that they would have been thankful for the chance to show some diversity. I mean, after all, these people virtue signaled America about accepting illegal migrants. Here's where the tyranny or the hypocrisy, well, it is tyranny, what the administration is doing. But here's where the hypocrisy lies. Residents of Martha's Vineyard, they posted signs that virtue signaled America. It was about every single liberal cause, okay, and to tell people that the filthy rich in Martha's Vineyard, one of the richest places in America, that they were better than you. Take that, peasants. Okay, the sign is the ultimate in virtue signaling. Okay, it turns out it says, we stand with immigrants, with refugees, with indigenous peoples, and with people of all faiths. At the very bottom that you won't see on this here, at the very bottom of it, because the screenshot cut it off, I got it from social media, it says, all are welcome here, hate has no business here. Okay, and you know what? They meant every single word of that. I mean, at least until 50 illegal migrants from Venezuela arrived on the island. That's when they lost their minds. The misinformation, fake news media almost immediately did damage control, as they knew the rich lefties were not going to put up with that crap, okay? Winter is coming, and there's no landscaping or kitchen jobs available during the off-season, all right? They only have thousands of empty rooms available throughout the island, so they couldn't possibly afford to take 50 illegal migrants, okay? So they fed them Rice Krispies, which we saw some virtue signaling video of that. They fed them some Rice Krispies, and then within 24 hours, the powers that be at Martha's Vineyard, they called the National Guard to get those people the hell out of there. Okay, the migrants were flown to a military base nearby. I've not seen any reports that Martha's Vineyard supplied the illegals with any parting gifts, although they probably did have some from, some souvenir shops that were not, being attended to because it's the off season. AOC's trafficking charge falls flat. Because the governor did explain on national television that the illegals signed consent forms to travel to the racist liberal island that virtue signals the rest of us, making the trip 100% voluntary. Leftists everywhere started pushing a lie that DeSantis transporting the illegal migrants, the 50 of them, to Martha's Vineyard cost the people of Florida $12 million. Well, no, it didn't. It was only $615,000. And you can take that to the bank from the Tampa Bay Times and the Tennessee Democrat. They both reported the trip cost $615,000. So where'd they get this $12 million figure from? They pulled it out of their rear end because, they transposed it onto this story, but the actual truth is that from the Times, the payment, which records say that was for a relocation program of unauthorized aliens. So in other words, the Florida legislature and the Florida Department of Transportation earlier this year, they received $12 million to transport unauthorized aliens from the state to other parts of the country. And why not? I mean, they're not a sanctuary state. They have their own sovereignty as a state. They don't have to take them in. Now, the argument that the left would make is that the Constitution does say that the Congress has the authority to create an uniform rule of naturalization. And that is true. Okay, but this isn't an uniform rule of naturalization. The Biden administration has violated just about every immigration law that we have since he's been in office. So there's no reason to believe that this what he's doing is constitutional at all. At a news conference on Daytona Beach on Friday, DeSantis acknowledged for the first time that the migrants who were sent to Martha's Vineyard were part of a voluntary transportation they're signing up for. So that's where the lying leftists pulled the $12 million figure. It wasn't $12 million to fly 50 people, for goodness sake, from Florida to Martha's Vineyard. They want you to believe that, okay? Here's a parody video, okay, by the way. Here's a parody video, but it pretty much sums up how the Democrats on Martha's Vineyard felt when they got those 50 illegal migrants and then 24 hours later had them hauled off by the military. Okay, watch this. Looks real nice. Ah, look at the coastline. Oh, sweet. Ah, those lucky immigrants. Keep out. Ooh, what? keep out. Yeah, that's the message pretty much. Stay the hell out. No migrants. Yeah, you're not allowed to have them. Forget the virtue signaling sign. Probably tearing them down from their houses, stores, city hall. Oh, get the F out of here. Can you imagine that? Get the F out of here. That's what they believe. I mean, they showed us that. They showed us. Don't say, oh, well, they just dumped them off here on us and we weren't prepared. Do you think the people that live in border towns in Arizona and Texas, do you think the people 50 miles out from the border, from those two states, that they were prepared for 4.9 million illegals passing through? Do you think they're prepared for their towns to be overwhelmed? And they're not as filthy rich as Martha's Vineyard. You know, now I understand the leftists are all over Twitter saying, who is this company that flew them? It was a legitimate company, airplane travel company that took a legitimate contract and flew them. I mean, what, do you want to cancel them now because of that? They did their job? Come on. All right, so AOC took to social media and said, not people calling others illegal as they fondly recall the last name is spelled the way it is because great-grandpa came to the U.S. with the equivalent of a misspelled Post-it note. Now, actually, what she's talking about is when different waves of people came over, like, for example, it is a derogatory term. I know a lot of my Italian friends who like the term WOP, W-O-P, but it's considered a derogatory term. You shouldn't use it unless your friends tell you that you can. But it stood for without passport or without papers, because during the Italian immigration, where they all came through legally through Ellis Island, a lot of them didn't have passports, they didn't have paperwork that had their names on it. And a lot of the agents that were there, that were signing them up and processing them, when they told them their name, they didn't know how to pronounce it, and they certainly didn't know how to spell it. So they spelled it in the best way they could, or they cut certain endings off. And they had their first set of paperwork that had a different name. But you want to know something? They didn't care because they were getting the American dream. They were coming through legally. They were doing it right. Okay, we had this system in place for over 100 years, and they did it right. And they came here, and guess what? Italian Americans are wonderful. I mean, they brought a lot of culture and a lot of their smarts and a lot of their talents to us. And you're telling me that illegal aliens, that the first thing that they did in our country was to break our laws to get in? You're telling me that that's the same thing? No, it's not. It's not. So AOC then follows up with, by today's standards, most U.S. families would be deemed undocumented or trafficked at some point in their family history. Well, that's just not true. Most people that came here legally. Of course, there were illegals that wandered over the border over the years, but the overwhelming part of them came through legally. I mean, she has no evidence to show that it's not true. You know, she says, for the most part, people didn't need lawyers and years of processing to come to this U.S. Until immigration became a racialized issue. Remember that? Well, how is it a racialized issue? Why? Because they speak Spanish and they're from the South? How is that racial? I didn't know speaking Spanish and coming from another country made it racial. No, she's the one that makes it racial. She's the one that always uses the term people of color, which was the new term that they could add a hell of a lot more people in with their virtue signaling. You know, okay, another moron moment brought to you by AOC. So she also called them refugees. She earlier in the day, she tweeted out that the illegal immigrants she referred to are refugees. I already covered that. They're not refugees. Okay, people that come from Ukraine would be refugees because there's a war going on there, because Putin invaded. The Russians are in a war there, and I'll guarantee you, if it was 50 Ukrainian refugees that wound up on Martha's Island, I mean, the Hollywood celebrities and whatnot, the Obamas would have been there. They would have come back to the island immediately, would have thrown a parade for them, given them welcome baskets, and put them up in housing. You know, but instead, since they were considered filthy Venezuelans, you know, within 24 hours, they get the National Guard, the military, to deport them out of the island, off the island. So they put them into a military base. Unbelievable. What a lot of Republican politicians fail to understand is that not everyone shares their zero-sum scarcity mindset. I would say pretty much most Americans do believe in legal immigration. Unless you have a political agenda, there's no political agenda in saying come in legally. You know, they all talk about, the Democrats talk about, we have to create a pathway to citizenship. You already have a pathway to citizenship. It's called coming in legally through a legal port of entry. That is your pathway to citizenship. Yes, it takes a long time to process it, years. It could take money and lawyers that you need. Sure. And that's because our government over the years has become a leviathan. Okay, a leviathan with written rules and regulations to make the lawyers happy. You know, the people, the Lawyers Guild that donates a lot of money to Democrats, and they just created this whole system. Well, okay, so it takes a long time. Well, guess what? The people that come through legally and they go through that process and they spend that amount of time and they work while they're here and they want to live the American dream, and finally they get their citizenship. God bless them. We love them. Because that's what America's all about. It's not about sneaking over the border, living illegally, living in the underground world, you know, where a lot of times you're forced to commit crimes in order to survive because you can't do anything authentically. Well, the Democrats' answer to that is to just get rid of the illegality of it. Just let them walk the hell in, meaning citizenship means nothing. You know, citizenship just doesn't mean anything. They should all have de facto birthright citizenship, if you want to come up with a crazy term, which trust me, they may start using very soon. Many of us understand that immigrants and refugees are a blessing. Now, we do understand that immigrants and refugees are a blessing. These people, however, that Biden's letting in are not immigrants. They're illegal immigrants. Stop conflating the two. And they certainly aren't a blessing. They are costly. They cost money. Because now when Biden brings them in, he says that the American taxpayer owes them a living. Okay? No one owes us a living, the American taxpayer. Okay? We have to fight for everything we get. But now they're supposed to, because of virtue signaling, because they have a plan, they look at them as unregistered Democrats and they want to get them registered and give them amnesty so that they can vote and turn the entire country into California. No, thank you. If they came in legally, you know what would be the greatest irony? The greatest irony. Think about this. The illegals that are coming from south of the border, okay, most of them are Hispanic. Okay, so they come into the country. Do you think they're going to hang out in rich neighborhoods like on Martha's Vineyard on the island? No, they're not going to put up with that crap. The liberals there, they booted them off within 24 hours, right? So you think they're going to live in black neighborhoods? I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I think they're going to generally live in Latino communities. Okay, I think that's where they're going to go, in Hispanic-speaking communities, because, you know, like each other, you know, you get along better, you learn to be, you know, to assimilate better, right? Well, guess what? The Hispanic community is turning more and more against Joe Biden and the Democratic Party because, like the black community in America, many of them are finally learning that the Democrats are full of bullshine. Okay, they promised them for years that they were going to come through for them. They never did. And so to make up for that, they didn't say, oh, well, you know what? Don't hold us to the standard of what we told you. Just watch out for those Republicans because they're evil. They're evil bastards. Even those MAGA Republicans. Oh, look out for them. Yeah, don't ever vote them in because we love you. You know, we keep telling you we're going to do for you, but we're not doing it. But we keep telling you we are, and that's what you want to hear, right? And that's what it all comes down to. And so Hispanics are starting to learn that. And they're saying, you know what? Under Donald Trump, Hispanic unemployment went down to the lowest levels ever recorded for Hispanic Americans. So same thing happened for black Americans. Now, for women, I'm sorry, they didn't do lowest recorded ever. They just did. It was the lowest recorded unemployment numbers in 75 years. So Republican economics work. They work every single time they try. You cut taxes across the board. There's none of this tax cut for the rich. Everyone got a tax cut. In fact, the lower and lower middle classes had a higher percentage of tax cut than did the wealthy in this country under Trump. They don't want to tell you that. It's the dirty little secret that Democrats and their Praetorian Guard news media don't want to tell you. But Hispanics understand that they lived better under Trump. That they were able to raise their kids easier, okay, because they had jobs. There were a plethora of jobs. that were around. Okay, AOC, the dumbbell in the beginning of the Trump administration, if you remember, she said, well, the reason why Trump's unemployment numbers are so good is because so many Americans have to work 2 and 3 jobs. Not understand. She has an economics degree from Boston. I mean, she ought to get the money back or sue them for it, for breach of contract, because she hasn't learned a thing. You don't rate unemployment by the number of jobs people have. It's the number of people who are working. So if somebody has 3 jobs, that's not 3 non-unemployment. That's one person who's working. Okay, so I mean, she's a dingbat in everything she says, and she's proving it here as well. So the Democrats are virtue signaling. They realize they're in trouble, even though you have some groups out there and some misinformation news media, the fake news media, who are saying that that the polling numbers show there's not going to be a red wave. No, there still is. The New York Times recently did a study where they looked at 2016 election bias in polling against Trump, and then 2020 election errors that were made, and they found out that the errors that they did in 2016 are not the same errors they did in 2020, but they have the same results. In 2016, they were biased against Trump because the people that they polled, when the Democrats and the media trashed Trump so badly since the moment he came down the escalator and lied about him saying all Mexicans were rapists, which he never said, from that moment on, they trashed the living hell out of him, but the people listened to him. They heard him. He didn't just give platitude speeches. He actually explained how he was going to do things. And they thought it made sense. And finally, there was someone who was running for president that wanted to help them and not transfer all their damn jobs overseas or bring in tons of illegals to take up those jobs. Okay, so they voted for him. But when the people called them, when ABC News or Ipso or whoever the hell they are, when they called them and did the surveys, the polls, who are you going to vote for? Well, a lot of them were too embarrassed to say they were going to vote for Trump because, think about it, they wanted everybody to think that nobody wanted to vote for Trump. So they either hung up on them or they said, I'm voting for Hillary. Okay, and then the second thing that a lot of people don't recognize was the never voted before voter. Trump brought out millions of people that were adults who lived their whole lives and never once voted. He brought them out to the polls. Now, how do you call someone, okay, that never voted before? Because a lot of these are, like Rasmussen started it, one of the better polling agencies. They started it, and Trafalgar now does it exclusively, but they started it saying that they were only going to call likely voters. So how do they find that? Are you going to likely vote in the next election? Yes? Okay, here we go. No? Okay, sorry. Thank you for your time. Goodbye. Right? Because if you get likely voters, okay, they're that say, yeah, I'm voting. I'm definitely voting. I mean, the person on the phone can tell that they are paying attention. Okay, and what happened in 2020 was the same thing. Everybody trashed Trump, yada yada. People didn't want to admit it. Well, the Times study said that when they applied today's polling, okay, when they applied the 2016 error biases and the 2020 errors to today's polling, the Democrats are not doing nearly as well. They're not ahead in the way that the polls are trying to show it now. And so they're still in trouble. Republicans are probably going to take the House. Mitch McConnell is doing next to nothing to help Republican candidates in the Senate. He just said they're all bad candidates. Like he couldn't tell them, like instead of talking about nonsense in your campaign, why don't you just point out what the Democrats have done to the American people for the last 2.5 years? Just point it out. Like in other words, do you want 8.3% inflation and higher? Where you might not be able to afford to eat soon, feed your family. Do you want $4 a gallon of gas? Which is the norm now. I mean, of course, right now it's a little under because Biden, he realizes in under 60 days he has a midterm election, so he artificially lowered the cost of gas because he stole oil from our reserves. Okay, the reserves, our strategic reserves of oil are supposed to be there for the military in time of war. Okay, and now he's already, according to the numbers, sold 7 million barrels to China, to our enemy, to China. Okay, he's selling it to Europe, because they shut down Putin's pipeline, right? So there's like 463 million barrels. He keeps doing. Apparently, he's scheduled to sell another million barrels to China in October next month. So, I mean, do you guys want that? I don't think you do. I don't think you want to pay higher prices for everything, right? I don't think you want another 5 million illegal aliens coming in. All right. So all this virtue signaling AOC and the rest of the Democrats are doing, it's because they realize they're in serious trouble. Okay. If they lose one house of Congress, just one, the hemorrhaging stops, because the Republicans aren't going to allow Biden to do what he's doing. And the things that he couldn't get through legislatively, he's done through unlawful executive orders. I mean, his entire presidency has been mostly unlawful. They say, oh, he got a lot done. Yeah, by finagling votes, by tripping people up. They just fooled Joe Manchin. Schumer just cut a deal with him, and Manchin gave him the vote, and Manchin isn't getting what he was promised, and Schumer came out and basically said, screw him. You know, so never trust a Democrat. All right, that's it. I'm done. Thanks. Have a good day. Just wanted to stop in and talk about the hypocrisy of AOC and the Democrats when it comes to illegal migrants coming into the country. Take care.